I started taking this thing apart in my last video, but it turned into a rant. So let's just take a look at this engine. It's a random engine. I pulled it from my floor in my garage where I've got like 6 other engines laying around. 7. Anyway, so first off, I don't think it's anything I did because I don't use this type of sealant. It's just a gray sealant. I don't typically use anything but a black sealant. A specific brand? Not necessarily. I just like to use stuff in the tube, like a toothpaste type tube. I don't mess with anything else. The toothpaste type tube sealant, and something that isn't the cheapest, you know, a name brand. So there you go. Permatex typically, probably. But I can tell that this thing has a new OEM timing chain tensioner, timing chain. It appears that the balance shaft chain was not changed. It looks like, you know, there's not slack in it, but I'm gonna start, at this point, I'm gonna start changing all the balance shaft chains. I'm just going to. I didn't used to, but I'm starting to see to where some of these have a problem with even the balance shaft chain stretching, so I'm gonna start doing all of them. So let's just tear this thing down. It's got a man oil filter. Someone did work to it, but one of the things that really drew my attention was this oil. This oil is, well, let's taste it. I'm just joking. We can smell it though. We can use our smell scent, and it seems like it's watered down by touch, and it seems like it's diluted with gas. Is that why this engine failed? That's probably why. So, that being said, we probably all want to change out our high pressure fuel pump as preventative maintenance, because if that fails, then I've addressed this in other videos. This thing it's got, I can't get too deep, it's got a high pressure fuel pump that can leak the fuel into the oil. And it takes a little bit for it to actually set the fault. If it sets that fault and you keep on driving it rich, it's actually making it more and more and more rich. So it's like that type of fault is really bad. Like that, someone tell me what the rich fault is. I've got it in my other videos. I don't memorize it all. Let's just start taking this thing apart. So first, I can start wherever. Start with these coils. I need to get this oil out. I'd like to put it in some type of container. I don't really want to put it in this pan down here because it's a little bit tricky to retrieve it from that pan. They have a Torx, a Hex, I think it's a T45 Torx, the Hex is oh, there's metal in there. There's metal in that oil. It might be a little bit hard to pick up. I just saw some metallic flake, I believe. We'll take a closer look. Anyway, as I was saying, there's like 4 different drain plugs that could be in this thing. A Torx, a Hex, an 18 millimeter, or a 19 millimeter. They started with 18 millimeters. And it's weird how they have 4 different drain bolts that could come in this pan, but. Remember, this is reverse thread. That's a good sign. The snouts of the camshaft are not scored up. This screen has been completely popped out, so someone kind of knew what they were doing, because that's what I suggest, is you just go ahead and pop the screen out, even if it's a new one. Now, this is not the most updated camshaft bridge, but in my opinion, that's not all that important. The most updated one has these lips that go up a little bit higher. Not a big deal. I'm gonna set this in a clean spot. Zip this breather assembly off. Now we have to take this front one off to get this cam tray off. We have to get a lot more stuff off, but I always like to pull this high pressure fuel pump off separate. Bust the nut loose on the pump first. Now this, I'm suspecting this to be bad. Just because the fuel is already diluted. So I want to put this, first off, I'm just going to take my marker and mark it bad so I don't mix it up. Right up top here. So now I know that this thing is bad. Now we'll zip it off. I needed to pick up the camera to show you this vacuum pump when I took it off. Remember, I liked it. Oops. Well, you might want to take these bolts out of the back and put them somewhere separate so they don't fall out like they just did with mine. So I got one that fell down in the oil, so oh well. I got extras. I don't have to dig down there and get it. But what I was trying to show you was that screen there is partially clogged. So you want to clean that up. You want to make sure that screen is still installed. And then you just have to line this up with this camshaft whenever you install this thing. Sometimes, you know, so if it's right there, then you need to do like that, right? And then you just take it over here like this, and see that? How easy is that? And then you just need to make sure that that little cam follower in there isn't blocking you. So you have to push it out of the way sometimes. That's really all there is to putting a vacuum pump gasket on. Of course, you have to actually take the old gasket off and put the new gasket back on, but nothing to that. Let's yank this intake manifold off. So first we have the good old oil filter that's usually too tight to take off by hand. Now, trash. Do we remember how to take the intake manifold off? First, it's missing this metal bracket. At least 50% of the time, that bracket's gonna be gone. That's just the way it is. If someone worked on it in the past, your chances are 50% that that person was too lazy to reinstall it. We're gonna get the coolant temp sensor out. Not the whole sensor, but the wire connector. We got two 10 millimeters on the side. That was from earlier. So sometimes you need a deep well for this 10 millimeter. In this particular case, I do not. That one there, it's usually easier to have a magnet handy. I kind of flicked it off to the side so it didn't drop in the oil. Now we got our T25s. There's a little wire connector up here for the cam sensor, and disconnect that. Why did I say T25? It's a T30. I know better. The T25 is this cam solenoid we're gonna have to get off here soon. So I like to break all these things loose first. How do we take it off? I'll show you. Just like that. One of those injector carrier pieces was broken there. We'll have to replace that. Look, a dropped bolt. That one was from something else. Not me. Now, the valves do not look that bad. It looks like someone has put a grinder on this surface. So, I don't ever find that really necessary to grind that surface. I would just wipe it clean maybe, but whatever. So now we're gonna get this T25 off right here. We have to get this one out. I like to put this bolt back in it. That's a good rule of thumb. Anytime you take bolts out, you can go ahead and put them back where they came from. Now, I wouldn't just take this cam tray off because this timing chain is tensioned. So let's go ahead and just relieve this timing chain and then we can pull the cam tray off. In this particular case, let's just go ahead and collapse the tensioner. Now, since I'm taking it all the way apart, it's not really necessary to put it in time or anything. I like to pop this loose before I unscrew it. It's the oil pump tensioner. And take this chain, just lay it right there. Now we'll take just this guide off. That's gonna happen. You're gonna have the cam snap no matter where it's at. It's gonna move just a little bit because those cams are under spring pressure. This is a good chain still. I'm gonna make sure it stays in a good clean spot. Gotta get out the big boy, I guess. Well, 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 what do we have here? It's not as clean as I would like it. And clean, I mean the bearing surfaces. There's some grooving. Not ideal. But they can be polished out. This exhaust one looks a lot better. There's some light scoring in the cam journals, but those can be polished out a lot easier. I can do that. I have to take this to a machine shop to have them polish it. That one looks good. That one looks pretty good. Pretty good. pretty good. All these bottom ones look pretty good. Now let's look at the cam tray. Now the exhaust side is looking pretty good as well. But now let's look at this intake side. See that grooving? How about there? See that? Grooving? What about that? See those grooves? And that one looks the best of all of them. Typically, this is the last spot that you're gonna get the oil, the back on the intake. That's what I typically see. If you're gonna see any grooving, it's gonna start right there, and it's gonna get better as it goes up this way. That's just what they look like. This is a close-up of the intake cam. Obviously the lobes look perfect. See, that one looks all right. See the grooving there? And then that one's gonna look worse. And that one looks the worst. I am not suspecting to find any damage in the cylinders. I'm suspecting to find damage in the bottom end, but let's rip this head off. Well, that's interesting. A little bit more torque on that back one. Nothing to see here, folks. Let's flip it upside down and look at the bottom end. This oil pump has to, not oil pump, oil pan, then oil pump. If you don't take this oil level sensor off, it's possible that you can break it while taking the pan off. Plus, I used to take these off with this thing still installed, and I used to clean and wash the pans with it still installed, and every once in a while the water would damage it. Would you look at that? I got some metallic flake on there. Definitely a sign we're getting ready to find some damage. Yeah, this block isn't gonna be any good, I don't think. Wow, someone really over-torqued the bolts in the rear main seal flange. So I'm just getting these top two bolts off right now. That's an updated rear main seal that's on there. How are we gonna take this oil pan off? Oh yeah. That's some sludgy metal. That's some bearing material right there, folks. Well, well, well. I do not trust this oil pump anymore for various reasons that you see. Now, here's what I like to do to check the bearings out. Let's spin the engine over. Yeah, it feels stiff. It feels stiff. I got some stuff to show ya. Let's take a close look. So this thing has had pistons before. How do I know? Well, take a look at that 43 with that line under it. Now let's take a look at that. See? Line. The line's on the same side. Now let's look at this one. Uh-oh, that one's flipped backwards. Can't be doing that. Someone put it on backwards. See how the line is, the 43 is the different direction? So who knows if they were even correctly. So this one is so hot that it's black. I can't even see the number on it. This thing in the back, number 4, like got so hot that the bearing melted off. Let's take it apart. This cap will just come right off. Ooh, look at that. Yummy. Oh, that bearing is nice. Nice shape. Yep, she was put together wrong in my opinion. Of course, it could have also been the high pressure fuel pump that failed and caused the oil to dilute, because it did smell like gas. So I can't necessarily say that that was the cause, but those lines should always be lined up. You shouldn't have caps flipped around. Well, I'm pretty disappointed because in some cases, the bearing can be bad, but the pistons can still be good because the bearing can spin and it's just how it works sometimes. The piston can still have oil to it and be perfectly fine. But in this case, it went too long and it scored up the skirt. And not furthermore than that, it went too long and it was hammering on the cylinder head. You see that spot right there and that spot right there? The bearing was so loose that it was actually punching the top of the cylinder head. Let me show you. Cylinder number 1, cylinder number 2, cylinder number 3. You see how cylinder number 4 has shiny parts at the ends? That piston was punching the top of that head. See that oil control ring right there? That third piston ring? That's the waffle style ring. That means this is the newest style. That's the style piston you want to put in these things. That's the most, how do you say, the